there's an element of Irish culture. We don't ever see Israel as a victim in that sense of the word, or if we do, we find a cause to blame it. You know, in other words, you brought all this on yourself.
Well, they said we brought it on ourselves as well when we were murdered, when half our population was murdered in the Second World War. And they said we brought it on ourselves when we have a war. I think that Israelis actually really have to judge the neighbourhood that they're living in. It's a very, very tough neighbourhood. They have to judge the neighbourhood that they're living in and deal with it according to the laws of the neighbourhood that they live in. And I think that they do it in a very ethical way, I think that most armies, if you look at, and there have been some very high staffing officers from other armies who've examined the ethics and the behaviour and how the Israeli army behaves when they're in a war, and comparing it to other armies, and actually they're probably have a lot higher standard. So I think that in terms of all of those things, the Israelis, they may be thought of as not being right, whatever they do, but they have to, at the end of the day, defend themselves and decide what is right, and come out and survive. Yeah. So the same as the Jews really had no choice. They didn't survive in the Second World War, but now we do have the choice, and we can survive, and destiny is in our hands to allow ourselves to survive.
True. Yeah, I often think people don't understand the difference between what you would call prevailing and victory. You know, they're
But you said before that, you know, whatever happens, so if we have our cities bombarded with rockets and innocent civilians are killed, no, you don't hear about it, nobody says anything. But if we do something back or retaliate in some way, then it's all big news. So I think that more and more people are hearing about the other side of the story. So I think it became too extreme. And you know, I find it very interesting when I come back home to Ireland as a tourist. I'm living in Israel, but I'm sort of half coming as a tourist. I'm not even not like other visitors, but I'm coming back home. But I see that the sympathy that the Irish people have, in spite of all of the bombardment of the general media, saying, you know, maybe giving a one-sided story against Israel, the people are very understanding, and that's my experience.
Sure. The two issues that have been given great prominence in the press here are the issue of boycotts and the issue of the so-called ships to Gaza. How damaging have they been in terms of formulating a perception of Ireland amongst the Israeli population?
It has had done damage in that I would say that previously people, maybe the bigger industrialists in Israel, didn't pay attention so much to what was happening in Ireland, and in terms of the political ways of the government or of the media, but now they are, and they become very aware of it. And actually Ireland is now under the spotlight of the Israeli media and of the government and I would say the people who invest, and I think that it's probably done damage. I don't think it's done damage to tourism on that, but it's done damage certainly to the image of Ireland. Ireland was always a very positive country, and you know, they could have played such a positive role in helping to get peace, but these people have done damage in actually going against peace. And I think that they've also done damage in that there's probably might be less jobs here, and actually it's a pity because Ireland is also going through a bad period. Would it be nice to have built a very much stronger relationship? If we were to talk about the flotilla, for instance, which came from Turkey and was looked on in Israel as a provocation from Turkey, because if you look at the Hamas regime, it's a regime that throws people off the top of buildings, Palestinians by the way, not Jews. They call for the genocide of Jews, and they call for Christian blood to be running in the streets of the capital of Europe, starting with Rome, which is the capital of the Catholic faith. And you can look at these speeches which are made by their leaders. This is the regime that you have. And the flotilla was started off by a Turkish as a Turkish provocation, not an Irish provocation. And it's a shame that a very small minority of people here, including some politicians who were in government, did this because it caused some industrial damage to Ireland.
Something that always comes
But
across.
I still think there's a very positive
Sure.
attitude to Ireland, and I think that there's a lot that can be done to improve it. I mean, today, if you look at the industrial relations, we have in the region of $700 million of trade. And if you look in 1988, there was probably less than 100 million. So we're actually, if you look over the years, the trade has grown hugely. So I think that there's a huge area that we can expand, and I think that more Israeli tourists can come to Ireland. It's a lot of money for Ireland. I think there's a lot of cooperation in high tech and in machinery that they can do as well.
So when you see something like we call it the flotilla, or whatever we like to call it, is the nuanced side of it understood in Israel, for instance? Sending out, establishing a GAA club or a hurling club in Gaza. Now, quite honestly, we find this slightly humorous in the sense that there's not a burgeoning desire amongst the Palestinian population to play hurling or Gaelic football, but this is talked up enormously here, and even rugby was apparently.
I don't think that any Israelis have heard about it.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, it doesn't even
so
make
that's
the
for
news.
domestic consumption, is it?
It's more for Irish consumption, and I don't think that it's so insignificant that I don't think it would even make the news.
If I could perhaps then ask you, Daniel, what is the impact of some of these in terms of tourism? Because tourism is quite an important, it's returned to being quite an important industry. The other issue as well is technology transfer, in the sense that a lot of people from Israel are coming here and working for companies like Google, Facebook, all those high-tech companies. Has it had an impact in that regard?
I think it is. If you look, it's very interesting. First of all, if you look at the populations, I said to you already, the very positive attitude in Ireland to Israel. I find it among the population entirely when I go around. If you look in Israel, they have a very, very positive attitude to Israel, and they love to Ireland, and they love Ireland, and they want to come here, and they're very interested in working with the Irish. They like the Irish. They like the Irish people, and I think that also there's a tremendous potential in tourism. Again, if we go back to the flotilla with Turkey, after that incident, the Israeli tourism to Turkey dropped by about 400,000 people a year. And that was a tremendous potential for Ireland to grab onto, but they didn't, which is a great shame, and it's actually gone to Greece.
Okay.
But I think it's still a possibility, and I think that Ireland could build on it. I think they could they could at least triple the amount of Israeli tourists that come in here.
Yeah, I mean, something that surprised me, particularly when I was talking to some of the entertainers here last year, actually the traditional music is very popular in that sense of the word.
Yeah, we have Irish traditional music. We have Israeli musicians who are playing a lot of Irish traditional music, and actually if you go there you won't believe that they're Israelis. You'll think that you're listening to Irishmen. So it's very, very, very good and very professional.
So was the issue of dervish and the cultural boycotts, which is one...
it wasn't heard about in Ireland actually, in Israel. It wasn't even heard about. Nobody knows who dervish is. And I think that the only loser in that was Ireland, because Ireland lost by not having their culture spread and Israelis not knowing who dervish was. But I think that probably Israelis would have heard that there's an Irish group coming, and out of respect and out of interest would have come to listen, and they would have maybe become more famous. So actually I think the only side that was hurt by that really was Ireland.
And particularly dervish themselves.
And dervish themselves, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that the move by Ejdona is actually damaging Ireland and not helping Ireland.
Well, there's some of us would say that they have a very apartheid view of culture, in the sense that if it doesn't meet certain criteria, then it's not.
Well, I mean, we could look at Madonna. Madonna started her world tour in Israel as a message to show people that she doesn't support any of these boycotts. and I would be interesting to see now how many people in Ireland go to see Madonna. I don't think they'll boycott Madonna because she started her world tour in Israel. So I think that would give us the answer to Ejdona and their approach.
Yes. Moving along then, Daniel, I mean, one of the things that's not terribly well appreciated is the Irish contribution to Israel, and the place we're in is probably the best place to start. It's named after Chaim Herzog, who went on to become the president of Israel. I mean, very important man, but he wasn't the only one. How important is it seen in Israel, and how well is it perceived, the Irish contribution?
The Irish contribution is tremendous. And we can start with Chaim Herzog's father, who was the first chief rabbi of Israel and had been the chief rabbi of Dublin.
Chief rabbi of Dublin as well.
We can go on to other people, including professors in universities. We can talk about people who've become very big industrialists in Israel. They came from Ireland. On all walks of society, in medicine, we had a head of anaesthetics in Rambam Hospital. He's from Cork, Sandy Berkan, and you can look at me. I'm a very
I was going to say you're being too modest yourself.
You can look at my success story. It's like the story, you hear the stories in the United States about the immigrants coming in and making it. So Israel is the land of opportunity. And it's a country where you can make it.
Yes, it's still going on because Yitzhak Herzog is
that's right.
Is second generation, but he's
that's
continuing
correct.
that contribution.
That's correct. And we have so many success stories. I think the whole Irish community is very, very, very successful. They become doctors, they become lawyers, they've become politicians. They've gone into all sorts of areas, research, universities, whatever you want. And I think that they've all done well. My own experience in Israel was, I started off as a resident in ophthalmology. I'm today a chairman of a leading department of ophthalmology in Israel. I'm part of the Technion University, which is the medical school, which is a university, by the way, that's won 3 Nobel Prizes for science. I think that all of the Irish have done well. I raise the Irish flag in Israel, I raise the Irish flag all over the world when I go. I've addressed societies that are very prestigious that no other Irishman have ever addressed before. And I've always said I'm the Irishman who went to Israel. I'm always introduced as the Irishman who went to live in Israel. So I think I've always tried to do Ireland proud. And I think that we've got a lot we've done a lot for Israel. I think we've got a lot also to give to Ireland still.